All right, cool. Thanks for coming, everybody. I'm Chris Kindig. This is a very particular set of skills, geolocation techniques for OSINT investigation. All right, so since most of you probably have no idea who I am, I'm Chris Kindig. I work in corporate global security. I know in my bio it says I'm in the Denver area, but I actually just recently relocated to Boston. I've been living in a hotel for about a month now. So just bear with me as I go through this. Before that, I did theft and fraud investigations. I was a bit of a road warrior. I worked in 26 different states. Before then, I started doing traditional gumshoe work in Chicago. So surveillance, process serving, that kind of thing. Just want to make a quick note that I stand on the shoulders of giants. A lot of what I've learned here has come from various mentors and instructors over the years, and you'll probably hear me mention them as I go through. I'm also a first-timer. This is my first time ever speaking at an InfoSec conference, so thank you for having me. Thanks. So why don't we start off with an example of super easy geolocation through OSINT. So a lot of you guys have probably been to open source intelligence talks before. And they usually start off with something like, you'll find a super interesting person posting stuff on Reddit, and they're the kind of person that likes to reuse their usernames on their other social media accounts. You Google dork your way into that, and then as you go through their photos, you find out that they post their delivery address to their front door in their photos. That's not what we're talking about today. That kind of stuff is, everybody knows that everybody puts all their information online. They share way too much on a regular basis. That's not news. But recently now with GDPR and that people are becoming a little bit more self-aware, it's getting a little bit more difficult to find just random geotags in their tweets or something along that line that'll take you literally to their front door. So what we're going to talk about today is geolocation techniques using details and information from images and photos to pinpoint a particular location. So the two common use cases that I have will be situations where I actually need to find the location of an event or a particular subject of an investigation. And then another scenario I run in sometimes are, let's say you have a social media account where it's under some bogus name or you have a really common name and you're trying to determine whether or not this is actually who you're looking for because they don't post any pictures of their face. You can use this kind of, be like if you know the general address where they're supposed to be, you can pinpoint that with those photos and be like, okay, I'm probably looking at the right place. So we're going to do this by focusing on three main categories: metadata, reverse image search techniques, and analysis of the image and video itself. So we'll start off with metadata. We're obviously looking for EXIF data. Located inside of our images and photos. Now this is the lowest likelihood of anything I'm going to show you right now, but it also has the potential for the greatest reward. Most social media websites strip metadata nowadays. Facebook, Instagram, Imager, Twitter, across the board. Basically anywhere that you would really want to find this is gone at this point. The few places that you can still find it are places like blogs, personal websites, photography sites. Flickr, people do still use Flickr occasionally if you're super into photography. And then some other random image hosting websites. There's an example here. There was a guy I saw once that was bragging about stealing a Christmas tree on Reddit, and he'd post a picture of the actual tree inside of his house, and it was in some image site that I've never heard of before. I can't even really remember what it was, but it sure enough had the metadata intact. So what I'm trying to tell you is that you should always be in the habit of checking just in case, because you might get lucky occasionally. Does everybody know the backstory behind that particular image? Familiar at all? Okay, so the guy on the left is John McAfee. He's the creator of the antivirus program that nobody uses. And he also, my apologies. So he also tends to live this lifestyle where he thinks, I think he's seen one too many episodes of Narcos, and he likes to roll around and do this outrageous things on a regular basis. In 2012, He actually was being sought by the Belize authorities due to a murder that took place on his property. He didn't want to answer questions, so he left the country, and no one was able to find him for a little while. Vice came, they contacted him, and they came and met and had an interview with him, and after they published the article, they posted this picture, but they forgot to remove the metadata from the photo, and the Belize authorities were able to right to where he was. It was this random compound in one country over. So how do we go about actually checking for metadata? Basically, you need either a direct URL to the image itself where it's hosted, or you can download and save the image to your computer and work from there. Now, I want to make a quick mention that there are some websites, because of JavaScript, will make it a little bit difficult to download some of the images sometimes. An easy workaround for that is if you're using Chrome. If you go into the developer tools and actually look at the source for the images, you can open them up in a new tab and save them from there. You can recreate the same thing, same process in Firefox by going up to the little eye next to the URL, clicking there, pull up the media tab, and then you can save them from there. So just a pro tip on that one. After you actually have a URL or an image, you can take it to one of these following places for analysis. So Jeffrey's Exif Viewer has been around for a very long time. It's what a lot of people use on a regular basis. Invid is something that's kind of new to the scene. That's a Chrome extension. You're going to hear me mention that several times during this course because it's developed by an organization of journalists that have kind of put several tools that would use in this process together in one place. I actually have been very impressed with it, and so you'll see some of the different use cases as we go through the presentation. And then Exif Tool, of course, has been around longer than dust. You can put that on Linux, Windows. I think works on Mac too. I've never tried it before. But use case between these first two and Exif Tool is dealing with open source and closed source images or videos. I would not upload some private photo or movie to Jeffries if it hasn't actually been found on the internet, because they do actually save the images afterwards. So you don't want to compromise an investigation for some reason or another. So what's actually in the data here? So geotags are the most obvious thing we're going to be looking for. This is actually an example from Jeffries. You can see here lat long. You have an altitude and actually the direction the camera was pointing at the time the image was taken. That's due to the accelerometer that's inside of most mobile phones nowadays. So if it happens to be there, you really know what you're doing there. So keep that in mind. Other stuff you can find. So this image, actually, I took that off Flickr, just so you know. So you have timestamps and then actual information about the camera that took the picture itself. So this is Exif Tool on the side here. Camera models, occasionally that can be useful. I mean, it could be something that, like, say you're involved in a search warrant and you want to look for a particular model of camera that took this photo. It's something to keep in mind. Otherwise, the timestamp can actually be more useful than you would think, and I'll kind of come and relate back to that more often. And nowadays, kind of circling back, if you actually do find Exif data, most of the time the geotags will be removed, but you will still have this information, so kind of try to make use of what you've got. A special use case here with YouTube. So Amnesty International hosts this tool on the website located there. Human rights activists work with video, particularly YouTube, on a regular basis when they see certain atrocities, mass graves, beheadings, that kind of stuff. And it's usually important to find the exact timestamp when a video was uploaded to YouTube. So you can get that off of this. You can also get the direct video ID, the date it was uploaded, and then it will also produce these 4 thumbnails from the image itself. You can directly reverse image search them from that website. These are produced with every YouTube video that comes along. You can get to these through a URL trick, but this tool cuts out the middleman for you. So speaking of reverse image searching, anybody that's ever seen Catfish probably knows what reverse image searching is, right? So it's hit and miss, to be honest, but sometimes it can be some big payoff. You can manually reverse image search on Google, TinEye, Bing, Yandex, Pretty much every major search engine now has this capability where you can directly drag and drop an image into the search box and search it that way. You can upload it from a directory, multiple different ways you can do that, or a URL. In Google Chrome, you can actually just right-click on an image and reverse search it through Google itself right there. It's a nice pro tip on its own. And then Invid, once again, going back to it, this extension allows you to, once it's in place, you can right-click it and it will give you the option to search all the above directly from the image itself, so you don't have to manually navigate to each URL. So a good tactic on this is when you actually have search results, you'll see if the image itself has been reproduced, and then below it, you'll see, say, visually similar images. That's usually your pay dirt. You want to kind of try to work through there and see if you can find other images that match, particularly if you're looking for a specific landmark or location. You can look through and other people that have been hosting photos to their Google accounts or something along those lines. You can kind of see maybe a different angle or different position, but it's the same landmark of what you're looking for. That being said, you can also take images, crop out a certain portion of the image itself and try just reverse image searching that, and you will sometimes get good results that way too. I've done that with businesses, once again, specific landmarks like churches, sometimes even really specific foliage will work occasionally. So just kind of get, once again, like metadata, just get in the habit. This is your normal investigative process as you roll through. Just do it every single time, so then that way you don't have to worry about missing something. Redundancies are extremely important in OSINT across the board, so you always want to check all the above. So if none of that works, then we can move on to actually analyzing the photo itself. You want to look at the details within the photo, such as signage you can see, or the video for that matter, landscape, specific structures, landmarks once again, and then even the weather can be used occasionally for verification purposes. I want to make a quick note about the importance of context while you're doing this. So it's really important for you to establish a foundation from which you're going to make your inferences. If you're just rolling in with a random picture that you don't know anything about, and you're going to try, like say it's just a plain of a desert, and you're going to try and figure out which major desert on planet Earth that came from, with no other context, you're going to be spending all day looking through just pictures of sand, and that's not really going to get you anywhere. So try, if you know who you're looking for, say an example, you're looking for a specific person, what do you know about that person? It could give you an idea of where he might be. What are his background, his habits, where his other family members live. If you can get that from social media, or if you have access to paid data sites, that's something you would roll through. And these are old school gumshoe tactics. You know, you look for people's wives, their girlfriends, their kids. You're probably going to find an idea of where they're hanging out. And this is all just kind of a culmination to avoid analysis paralysis. You don't, once again, want to spend half an afternoon just looking at pictures of trees and sand. I know, because I've done it before. So start by getting the best version of the image that you can possibly find. So when you actually right-click on an image in a particular website, you can go and grab the copy the image, the address where the image is hosted, put it in our URL and bring it up, and usually can get a much higher quality version of that image. This really helps on Twitter a lot. You get this in some other places. It's actually the specific Twitter hosting URL right there. It's a lot easier for you to pull out minute details when you have a picture that's 3 times bigger. And it also, this can affect when you're trying to do your reverse image searches too. Better quality, it's able to pick up other details. If you're working with a video, it's extremely useful for you to actually break down the video into individual frames or images. You can go a single frame by a single frame and analyze road signs, signage, even vehicles, particular license plates can give you a clue as to which country it might be located in, or business for that matter. And you can do this through 2 easy ways. Once again, Invid will do this for you, upload it to it. I would do, like I said, a YouTube video, don't do it with a video from a camcorder. And it will analyze it and break it into individual frames for you. And again, you can reverse image search straight from that tool. Or if FFmpeg, for those of you that are familiar, it's a Linux tool. can do this for you as well. It is available on the Buscador VM, for those of you that are familiar with Michael Basil. So I would do either one of these situations. So actually here, this example here is from a video that I found on YouTube. It's this one right here. It's Hoods of Indianapolis. I would have preferred if it was with a Z. That's just my personal preference. So this is literally just some guy rolling around with a dash cam through a random neighborhood in Indianapolis. So breaking down your individual images here makes it a lot easier to analyze and kind of try to come up with a location. Now, signage. Obviously, we're looking for easy wins as we're combing through the video. This one right here, 4-star heating and cooling, and you have a phone number on the side of the building. It's really easy to Google straight to this location. You can also try going through a process of elimination by groupings of individual businesses. There's a particular blog post that I'm thinking in mind from a geolocation challenge where there was a group of businesses that were next to each other, one of which was called Expert, which is a electronics company that's located in Europe. Now, if you go to its Wikipedia page, it'll have listings of every single country that's actually has businesses in, which I think was about 11. So that narrows it down. You're basically starting with a huge scope and then funneling your way down to a specific area. After you have your 11 areas for Expert, there was another business next door called Golden Mountain, which was a coffee shop that was located specifically in Switzerland, I think. And if you have both those businesses right next to each other, it can lead you right to where the location is involved. So it's like I said, it's normal investigative tactics. You're just kind of using it with just a picture for the most part. So moving on to landmarks and other terrain. Wikimapia, for those of you that may be familiar, it's a very useful tool in this situation. So it can quickly switch between satellite views of Google, Bing, and Yahoo. Don't use the Yahoo one, mostly because I don't even think it works anymore, but it also is just redundant of Bing. They switched all their search parameters to Bing not too long ago. But it also can do this search for specific landmarks on a map, which is pretty cool. Let me show you this here. So here we have Indianapolis. This is just the basic satellite view itself, but if you go up here into categories, you can actually search for specific landmarks, like say a church. And it'll actually show you all the churches that are located within that area. So what's nice is that you can click on one of these dots and it will give you, oh, where'd my dots go? There. So that's awesome, perfect. So this will give you a lot of times the direct coordinates, a Wikipedia article about the specific location, and then it will give you these crowdsourced images sometimes. Not always, but sometimes you get them where people have said upload them to Google or what have you, or I think these are actually from the Wikipedia page itself, but it gives you a wider base to work with right from the get-go to kind of sort through other images. If you need to find landmarks quickly, I suggest you go here first. Google Earth, the actual pro downloaded desktop version, not Google Maps. I suggest you run with that for a couple of reasons. First off, it kind of gives you a three-dimensional image of the terrain itself and buildings. It makes it a lot easier to do cross-referencing with multiple points of data. So you have your specific buildings. You can kind of see as you're churning through locations or terrain quickly. You can find a mountain, and then over here you can see some foliage, and it kind of just pops out more quicker than rather if you're just looking at a straight down satellite view. It also has historical satellite view images, which is useful sometimes if you have part of a forest that's been cleared or construction site that didn't used to be there. You can kind of roll back the clock and see what that area used to look like before. Let's see. Show you here. So here we have downtown Indianapolis. Now, I want to show you this here, these overlays you have here. So not too long ago in this community, we lost a pretty big resource. It was called Panoramio. It was another example of crowdsourced images, just people that were tourists visiting cities, and they uploaded their own personal photos to an area. Justin Seitz, for those of you that are familiar, he made a Python script that would pull the images from both Panoramio and Wikimapia and kind of just put them all together. So you look for a keyword like a church and coordinates, and it would kind of just list them all together. That was really great, but Google bought them, shut it down, and now they're trying to kind of reproduce it here with Google Images. It's not as good, but it's still something to keep in mind. You can kind of just overlay that as you go through and turn them off as you're making your check marks here. So one other thing I want to show you really quick if we move into Street View. So, yeah, okay. This up in Google Maps. It's okay, I was prepared for this. So within Street View, now this is actually on the web application, not the desktop. If you move into Street View, you'll see on the side here this little bar that says Street View September 2017. If you click on the clock here, you can see previous images taken with the Google Street View car and actually go back in time and look at what this location looked like back in 2011. You can see it used to be kind of a brick before they painted it. This is pretty awesome because, like, once again, I've had situations where the timestamp going back to your metadata, you know, this picture was taken a specific date and year, and you're looking at where that's supposed to be. You think it is now, but there's this huge building there that's blocking the fountain that's supposed to be on the other side of this area. Go back and roll back the clock, you're looking at it again, and no, it's because they built it within the last 2 years. It used to just be a parking lot, basically, right? So kind of have to go back in time, think about a time warp, and then kind of move from there. So just a quick little fun tip there. Bing Maps, I want to make a quick point about them. Most of the time, this is pretty surprising, but their satellite images are more up to date than Google is on a regular basis. So once again, your redundancies, I would search through them as well every time. They also have this unique feature that's kind of similar to the 3D view of Google Earth, or it's called Bird's Eye. The images are actually taken with an aerial vehicle that's flying over that area, and it kind of gives you a really nice view of the buildings and other places as you're floating along and looking at images. Once again, if you're looking for landmarks, this can help them pop out a lot faster. Yandex, also look for there, particularly if you're looking somewhere within the Federation, the Ukraine, Crimea, Kazakhstan, whatever. Most of the time they have, there's a good comparison I saw not too long ago with Chernobyl. They're building some kind of building, like a huge dome that's on, I think, the western side of where Chernobyl used to be. And if you look at Google Maps, it's not there right now. But if you look on Yandex, you can see that it's being built and it's about halfway done. So that's a really good example. So check that out later at home, homework. And then, okay, so pro tip when you're doing this, this is something you just have to do over and over and over again. It really takes practice to get good at this. What helps is to use, like I kind of mentioned before, verify multiple reference points from the image or video from your view on the street to when you're looking from the God's eye, right? A tree, a red pole, and a building. You can see that from aerial is a lot easier than if you're just looking for a tree. Kind of just rule through that. As you can see here, I gave the example where you kind of have the arch from the state building and then the actual dome itself as you're looking. So it's just something you have to do over and over and over again. And once you get familiar with areas, you'll just sink right to it. Like, for example, Chicago. I lived there for 9 years. I can tell you pretty much any part of that city, I see it. It has this, you'll find that cities particularly have this particular look to them. You can just tell right away. Miami is like that too. I know Miami right away when I see it, which is weird because it looks, in theory, just like every subtropical major city, but it's not. And it's just something about it. So I wish I had a quick fix for you on that, but it's just something you got to practice, like most things. So quick note about weather. This is really for verification purposes. So this picture here I was looking at once, and it was somewhere, I believe the timestamp that was on social media said this was taken on like June 12th. And from the look of it, I was like, was there some kind of snap freeze there? It doesn't make any sense. So if you actually go to Wolfram Alpha, they do a really good job of keeping historical weather reports from specific days. You can put in what was the weather on 11/22 in Arlington, Texas, and they'll give you a full weather report for what that day was. And you can go back quite a few years. I think I've gone back about 20 years before, and they'll still have it. So in this case here, it was hot and sunny that day, and so as I went through and scrolled through the comments, I found at the bottom that this had been reposted from about 2 years ago, and so that explains that. So I was able to use those two trees, and it was what I was looking for, long story short, short story long. So flights, this is something that doesn't pop up very often, but it's worth mentioning. So ADS-B Exchange, this kind of popped up recently. There's a few different websites that have this data, but this is one of the best I've seen. It's all open source. You can access their API. They have historical records for flights, military, civilian, maritime. They have a lot of stuff in there. So this has been used before to cross-reference a location. Most historically, if you recognize this image at all, this is from the 4chan and that kid from Even Stevens incident that happened not too long ago. If you're, quick context, they were looking for a flag that had to do with the resistance and Donald Trump and that whole deal. That he had moved to a nondescript location and was live streaming a video from where it was every day of just the flag. All you could see was a flag waving in the sky. And 4chan, and they were able to crowdsource a number of different experts. It really does speak to the power of crowdsourcing, I will say, because you had people that were astronomers that were looking at the pathway of certain constellations, and you had another person that came in here and was able to reference two intersections of airplane flight data as it came through. Now, like I said, this kind of situation is really useful when you have something like a live streaming video that you can watch the entire time and look and see as things pass through. You know, and you can need multiple flights. You can't really go off of one random airplane and figure out where it might be. So I just want to make note of it because it's something to keep in mind. So then rolling through, man, we're really breezing through nap time here, aren't we? So resources here, Bellingcat, they're kind of the rock stars in this arena. They're a citizen journalism group. They do some extremely impressive work. If you're not familiar, I highly suggest you go to their website, read for their articles. Now, be prepared, it is not a TLDR, like it is, they are full reports. They will be like 20 pages long, and they will explain every step that they went through and how they came to their conclusion, but it's highly interesting. They're most notable for recently being involved, they were able to recreate the path of a Russian Buk missile launcher across Ukraine, and more or less conclusively were able to say this is what shot down MH17. And they did that all from geolocating videos and images, nothing else. It just went through and found the pathway as it went along the road. So yeah, definitely check them out. They have tutorials and guides on their website as well, so practice some of this yourself. Their forensic tools, which you're pushing here, it's in a Google Doc, and it's constantly updated. It has everything that I've shown here and more. It shows you a lot of different redundant tools. It goes deep into OSINT too, not just geolocation. Different social media tools, Basil stuff, that kind of thing, all up there. So definitely go in there. Like I said, it's maintained, it's updated on a regular basis, so just save that link and go back whenever you need it. Geolocate this.site. This popped up within the last week. The best way to explain it is the quote that's on the front of the website itself. Why can't I just ask Google Maps to show me all restaurants in a certain area with approximate distance of 20 meters from a newspaper kiosk? If you have to ask yourself that kind of question, then this is the place to go. It will show you. You can take a specific coordinates, a location, or a keyword rather that you're looking for. Say you want to find churches, a radius you're looking, 50 yards, and then from a newspaper stand. You can put that in and it will list them out. I'll show you and it's all from Google Maps API. Sector 35 is worth following on Twitter. Every Saturday he does a geolocation or verification quiz, posts it, and does a little CTF. You guys can try it. Some of them are fairly easy, some of them are really, really difficult. And he does blog posts a lot about the verification process that he goes through to solve some of them. There's a particularly interesting one using, I didn't want to go deep into it because I by no means am I an expert with it. It's called SunCalc. You can use it to calculate the angles of the sun, trajectory and sunset, sunrise, the shadows that are cast at certain times of days and the angles as it's coming through. So he was able to take the length of a particular shadow, compare it to where it should be during that period of time, and then basically come up with, oh yeah, this happened at 4:05 on June 3rd with no context whatsoever. So it's pretty impressive stuff. And then I'm gonna give a blatant suggestion that you join the Rocket Chat group, OSINT.team. This used to be the open OSINT Slack channel, for those of you who are familiar, and then we moved over there recently for reasons. So please join. It's a constant active community. There's people in there all day. There's a lot of big names that hang out in there too. Josh Huff, Mike Basil, Justin Seitz, all there pretty regularly. So you can glean what some of the other guys are talking about. OSINT is something that you kind of need to stay on top of on a regular basis. Tools stop working, websites change, techniques don't work anymore. If you buy a textbook and it's a couple years old, it's just about useless at this point. So you really need to stay on top of this stuff if you use it on your day-to-day, at least. So that's it. Man, really rocked through that. Anybody have any questions? Mm-hmm. Kind of, it's across the board because you still get tourists like that will visit certain locations for Christmas activities. You get a lot of stuff for that, and in fact, like that can be pretty critical depending on when you're trying to figure out a specific time of year. Kind of like example for the sun calculation. You know, if you're using that, if for some reason you need to get that granular and look at a particular shadow, knowing that it was sometime probably in winter, it can really help. You know, then that also can change depending on your hemisphere, though, too. So you do have to kind of keep that in mind. Yeah?
I saw by you on your earlier slides.
Yes.
Is there like a similar bias or advantage using Baidu in certain parts of the world? Or do you, like you said, with the index?
China, basically. Yeah, China is when you would use that.
From Baidu better than
in my experience, no. But kind of how I mentioned before, you should just get in the habit of making redundancies because sometimes it does pay off. I have skipped over steps that I didn't think were necessary before, and I've really paid for it in the past. So I would just say that kind of just do it kind of like, so if you had InVid installed, for example, you can right click and it gives you the options there. You literally can just click through each one, open it up, and then it's, you know, it's done. So you can go through each tab. It doesn't look any different, or I found it already. I don't need to move on. There you go. Cool. Anything else? Okay. Well, if you guys have anything, let me know. You can email me. You can slide in my DMs. Just let me know. All right. Have a good one.